Right, so today we're going to make a rice dish. So obviously our main ingredient is going to be rice. You can use whole grain rice, basmati rice, you can get boil in the bag rice, like the packets of pre-cooked, pre-flavoured rice if that's what you've got. Anything you want to use is absolutely fine. And then we're going to add in some vegetables, so they can be frozen like these ones or they can be fresh. So I've got some carrot, courgette, broccoli, peppers, mushroom, bit of onion. I've also got some fresh garlic, or you can use garlic, dried garlic or garlic puree. I've got a bit of lemon, which you might want to grate in a little bit of lemon zest or add a splash of lemon juice if you've got lemon juice as well. And we've also got some tinned options as well if you wanted to add any of that in. I've got some chickpeas which you could add in if you were vegetarian, or you could add in just to add extra protein even if you were going to add meat or fish as well. So then in terms of liquidy, flavoury things, you could add in some chopped tomatoes if you wanted to. If you had some pesto, you could mix in some spoonfuls of pesto. Just watch the salt content on some of the pestos. I've got some chilli as well, so you could add fresh, dried, crushed. This one's crushed chilies. And then in terms of protein, we're going to use, I'm going to use fish today, and so I've got some tinned mackerel or tinned sardines or tinned tuna. And then there's some chicken roll which you could use, or you could use tinned pork, you could use fresh chicken or pork as well, but you just need to make sure you cook that properly. And then added it to your dish. So we're going to get started in a second. Right, so the first thing we're going to do is to measure out some rice, and it's about, well, it's 75 grams per person, which is about half of a plastic cup full. So about halfway up the plastic cup. And then we're going to just pop it into a sieve, because you should really rinse rice before you cook it. So normally you do this over the sink with cold running water, but just so that I can show you, it's easier for me to do it over a bowl with a sieve. So I'm just rinsing the rice until it's nicely rinsed. Just shake it a little bit to let it drain. In fact, I'm going to stand it in that one. Move that out the way, and then we can get our rice on to cook while we prepare everything else. So I've got some boiling water in the pan, and I'm just going to add the rice that we rinsed into the pan. That's it, and then we're just going to pop that to one side. I'm just going to give the rice a little stir, make sure it's not sticking. And then we're just going to let that cook for about 10 minutes. If you're using brown rice, it will probably take you about 20 to 30 minutes to cook it. But white rice or basmati rice is a bit quicker to cook. The brown rice, however, will fill you up for a bit longer because it's got lots of good fibre in it. So there is an advantage to using brown rice as well. So while that's cooking, we're just going to get a little bit of the vegetable ready so that we can add that into our mixture. I'm going to use a bit of onion today. So I'm just going to chop that in half. I'm going to get rid of the onion peel. Okay, so I'm just peeling that off. And if the outer layer doesn't look too good, you can take that off as well. That's a bit papery too, so you just want to get rid of any layers that feel a bit papery, so we'll just move that out the way. Get rid of that. And then we're just going to cut that end off. And I'm going to chop it up today quite small. But you can make it quite chunky, as long as the veg is all the same size, it doesn't matter. Okay, just want to make sure it's all roughly the same size, because then it'll take the same amount of time to cook. So we're just going to pop that into our bowl over here. Now I've got some lovely stir-fry veg from that's frozen, and I'm going to throw some of that in today for a bit of variation. So I don't know if you can see, that's got some broccoli, baby sweet corn, some carrots and things in it as well. So I'm just going to put, that'll be about a couple of handfuls per person. And I'm going to use a little bit of this mushroom, which I'm just going to peel again. And I'm going to put fish in mine today. So I've actually got some mackerel, which is in a Thai red curry sauce already. So that's going to give us a little bit of extra flavour in our dish as well. But you could put in plain tuna, you could add in a squeeze of lemon juice, you could add in some mixed dried herbs, a bit of garlic, anything like that. So we'll just pop that mushroom in there. And I might add a little bit of tinned sweet corn as well. So I'm just going to pop that in. Move the knife out the way. There we go. A couple of spoonfuls of sweet corn. And that's nicely colourful. What we can do is we can add that into the rice in about 5 minutes time so that it cooks through nicely, but doesn't go too soft, so we still want it to have a little bit of bite to it. So we're just going to wait for the rice to cook before we add that in. But while we're waiting, we can open the mackerel, and then you can see it's got a nice red Thai curry sauce on it. This one is boned, so you don't need to worry too much about the bones. I am just going to get it out into a bowl and just break it up a little bit so that it mixes in more easily with my, that's it, there we go. It will make it a little bit easier to put it into our dish. And just break it up a bit just so that when we add it in, it will cook a little bit quicker and we'll be able to mix it through more easily. Okay, so you can see the mackerel breaking up there nicely. And so we're just going to put that to one side and we're going to check on our rice. So the rice is bubbling away, so what we're going to do is just add in our mixed vegetables and give it a good stir around, and just let that cook for the last few minutes while the rice is cooking. Just scrape all of that in. It should only take about 4 or 5 minutes to actually cook. So mix it all around. You can see the lovely colours again. Just going to let that cook. You can put a little bit of stock in the water if you've got some stock cube, but just watch the salt content on the stock cubes, especially for little ones. So we're just going to let that boil away for another few minutes. It's obviously stopped bubbling quite as viciously because I've added the frozen veg in. And then what we're going to do is drain it. So we'll get ready our bowl and a colander. You can use the sieve if it'll all fit back in your sieve that you used to start with. And then we're going to drain it in a second and then put it back in the pan to heat through so that the mackerel is properly heated back up. Because although it's cooked, we need to reheat it until it's piping hot before we serve it. I'm just going to put a lid on the pan just to help it come back up to the boil quicker, and then we can let it cook. So our vegetables have been in now for about 3 or 4 minutes, and I'm just going to take the lid off and we can just give them a little stir round. The onion will be the thing, and the carrots will be the thing that are going to be probably the hardest, because the broccoli is quite small. So I'm just going to check if they feel like they're cooked, and they do. So they're nice and soft but not too soft. So I'm going to turn off the gas, and then I'm just going to drain all that lovely vegetable and rice into my colander, and then we're just going to pop it all back into the pan. Just make sure we got rid of most of the water. Scrape it all back in. It's probably steaming up my camera at the minute. There we go. Let's put that to one side, and then we've got this lovely mackerel with the Thai curry sauce on it. So I'm just going to mix that through, and then we need to put the gas back on and just make sure, but now you need to keep stirring it so that the rice doesn't stick to the pan and get burnt. So you have got to pay attention now while you're doing this last bit. So we're just going to stir it round. You can see that the curry paste is covering the rice and the vegetables nicely, and the mackerel shared itself out evenly throughout the mixture. But what we need to do is cook it for about 5 minutes on a high heat, so stirring all the time just to make sure that mackerel is piping hot before we serve it. And this is probably a good portion for an adult and a child, or a few children, because we've added quite a lot of veg, which has bulked out the rice that we've added and the mackerel. So you definitely get a couple of portions out of this amount of food. So we're just going to keep stirring and let it cook through. And now if you had anything else you wanted to add, like a squeeze of lemon or lime, if you wanted to add any fresh, if you had any fresh herbs, now's the time to add them in as well. And you can adjust the seasoning and make sure it tastes how you want it to taste. And then we're just going to keep it moving before we serve it. And with rice, it's a good idea to eat the rice straight away rather than keeping it warm or serving it or reheating it the next day because of the food poisoning risk. So eat the dish straight away once it's ready to serve. Right, so I'm just going to turn off the heat, and you can spoon it into a dish to serve it. So I've got my dish, so all you need to do then is pop it into the dish. You can serve it. And it's ready to go.